This is a special edition of Late Night Health. I'm Mark Alyn. Our guest is Greg Macpherson. And Greg and I know each other because we did an interview on, I think you said mitochondria, the little tiny things
Yeah,
in cells, years ago, right? Been a
yeah,
couple of
that's
years.
right, Mark. I recall and enjoyed the conversation, and it was all about these tiny things called mitochondria, which are our cellular battery pack. And that was a fun chat. Thank you.
Yes. Well, we're going to have another fun chat about growing old. Um, we're going to talk about harnessing the 9 hallmarks of aging. He's written a book. Greg's background is as a pharmacist, but you've also developed products and other things, and you haven't been, as you said, in a dispensary for a number of years, correct?
That's right. I've been a pharmacist for 30 years, but the last 10 years has been away from the dispensary, working more in the biotech area and looking at molecules that we're just really seeking to solve the issue of cellular aging. So that's really where I've been hanging out for the last decade. And finally got around to writing that book.
Got it. And I'm really curious. I talked to somebody earlier today about aging. And, when we think of aging, we think of somebody who's 148 years old. They look it, they feel it, they want to go. But there are people in their 40s and their 50s and their 60s and 70s and 80s who say, I'm old. I never say that. Of course, I wrote a book, Growing Old Sucks, but it doesn't have to. Do people have to feel old? I mean, is that part of the requisite of aging?
I think there's a couple of aspects to that, Mark. I think there is definitely an element of feeling a little older as you get older with less energy. So that can affect, but it's also how you mentally approach aging as well. Like there's just, people talk about being young at heart, young at mind. These people actually tend to age a little better than the rest of us, just because their attitude actually manifests in better health, better energy, and better health decisions. So I think it is, fundamentally, as we tackle aging and as we head into it, having a positive mindset has a massive impact.
What percentage do you think is attitude or mindset in aging?
I don't know about the exact number, but I'd say it's quite reasonable. There's a whole bunch of data showing that how you approach aging actually, can actually shorten your telomeres. So if you actually approach aging, and telomeres are the little caps on the end of our chromosomes, and they're kind of like, you want to look after those because the shorter they are, the more chance you are of getting unwell and passing on. So looking after them is good. And when you are stressed and stressed and chronically stressed for over a long time, it actually chips away at these little telomeres, and that's not so good. So even just the fact of mentally approaching these things, approaching aging in a positive way, it manifests in positive aging. Yeah.
So size does matter.
Size does matter, it turns out.
Yeah. Right. Okay. You've done a lot of work with and research with DNA, and we're going to talk about some of the hallmarks of aging as you describe them. But you're a dad. You have 3 kids. They're all ostensibly grown, even though your youngest is still in the teens. What makes you an aging expert, other than the fact that you may be a little bit over 40?
Yeah. It's just time in books and time in the industry that gives me the opportunity to, claim some level of expert status. I mean, there are many people out there much more expert than me, but I guess where I've come from as a pharmacist is being able to translate the complex research and science and make it slightly more accessible to people. And talking about DNA, I mean, all of us know that it's the sort of the information or the code set that sits inside our cells, but it's just so much more than that. And we thought for the longest time that it was just about coding and defining what our cells do, but Turns out it's deeply involved in aging. Our DNA is under immense amount of stress from pollutants, from UV. That's not just from the outside. We breathe in oxygen as part of needing to live, and that oxygen does good things to us, but it also, in the process of, I guess, metabolizing or making the energy that we need, throws out free radicals. So that puts a lot of stress on our DNA as well. So, and as our DNA breaks something like 50 to 100,000 times a day per cell. So that's because of that, it's got a whole bunch of repair and maintenance mechanisms that the cell puts a lot of resource into, and those resources decline with age, and that impacts on how well our cells can operate.
We're talking about DNA. There's new therapies, new techniques, new technologies for vaccines, and of course, I'm going to mention COVID right now. I have to.
Yeah.
Before we started, you told me you were kind of excited about these new technologies, but aren't
Right.
they do change our DNA when you have the shot? Am I right?
Well, I mean, from my understanding, I am very excited about the technology, because it essentially, this technology is going to turn our cells into little pharmaceutical factories. So, at the moment, the vaccine is, I guess, coding, taking a little code into the cell, and that code is read by our little protein manufacturing units inside our cells to make the protein that's associated with the virus, and then the body responds to that protein like it is the virus, and prepares to, I guess, it prepares for that. So when it comes into contact with the virus, it can respond really quickly. But if you go beyond just that and start to think about what we can start to do with this technology, if we're a little short of testosterone, then we could use the same sort of vaccine to code for the body to put a little bit of extra testosterone in, or estrogen, or maybe some extra diuretic. So all of a sudden, we've got some very advanced tools which are going to allow us to essentially it sounds a little weird, but turn our bodies into little pharmaceutical factories. And it's what we do now, and it's what declines as we get older. So we may end up with sensors, little patches on our body that just tell us, hey, look, you're running a little low on this, and that patch will drop a little mRNA, which is the same sort of technology as what we're injecting with the vaccines into the body, and that'll tell the body to top up on that particular molecule. So it's really giving us insight about where we're heading, and it's quite exciting.
So the whole ED industry, and I'm assuming that in New Zealand where you are, ED is a problem there, low testosterone and erectile dysfunction. It can go away.
It can go away, absolutely. And we're going to be able to top up these hormones, and in fact top up many of the molecules and chemicals that our body naturally produces, but decline as we age. So that's going to be quite transformational once we have that technology available to us.
And of course, don't top up your gas tank, because that's not good for the environment. Okay.
Exactly.
Right. Let's talk about harnessing the 9 hallmarks of aging. How do we get in charge of these, and what are they? We won't have time to go through all 9, but give us a couple. Give us the first one that you think is the most important.
Yeah. So just to explain what the 9 hallmarks of aging are, it's not something I've made up. It's a group of hallmarks that have been, are a consensus from a group of scientists. In fact, a whole bunch of scientists from around the world. And a hallmark essentially is something that's associated with a particular condition or disease. So you get hallmarks of cancer, hallmarks of brain aging. In this case, there are 9 areas of our cells that decline with age, and how you work out whether something is a hallmark or not is that in the lab, if you go and make it worse, you accelerate aging, and if you make it better, you slow the aging process down. So this is how they were identified. So, and I've broken them down into, I guess, 3 main categories. So the first set is about DNA. And so that's about just the fidelity of your DNA, the lengths of your telomeres, and also these things called epigenetic dysfunction, or dysregulation. So epigenetics is I guess, how our DNA responds to our environment. And you might have a really healthy lifestyle of exercise and eating well, and that turns on genes that are really good for you. And at the same time, if your twin over the road decides to spend more of his time on his couch and perhaps not eating quite as well, and then there are different genes that get turned on. So this is just a way that the DNA adapts to our environment, and that's perhaps a good one to talk about, because number one is we can start to measure our epigenetic health, if you will, of our cell. There are opportunities now to measure the methylation on our DNA. This is kind of like the junk that accumulates on our DNA as we age. And you and I have got two birth dates, right? Well, two ages. We've got our birth date, our chronological age, and we've got our biological age. And that can be quite different than a chronological age. My twin brother, who's sitting on the couch not exercising so much, might actually have a biological age of 70, whereas my triplet on the other side, who's exercising and eating well, may have a biological age 20 years younger than the chronological. So what's exciting about that is you can measure it and you can manage it. This is something which is quite modifiable. So right now I'm sitting here and I'm 51 and I've done the test and I'm sitting at around 50 from a biological age. So that tells me I've got a wee bit of work to do to actually improve that and bring my biological age down. And there are some scientists and some people out there that are 50 chronologically, but have got cells that are acting like they're 30, and that's I guess the exciting thing as we look at the hallmarks, as we can start to, as we understand these targets, we can start to actually modify them, and that's really
epigenetics. Isn't that the process of actually changing your DNA for the better?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we're 20% of our genes is hard coded. I've reached 6 foot, and I'm just, that's hard coded into my genes. Maybe if I eat a little better and maybe not had a cigarette or two when I was in my teens, that might have changed. I might be 6'6", but the epigenetics is essentially the ability for our genes to regulate our body in response to our diet, and that's really important because in the past we might have been in periods of famine, or we might have been in periods of extreme cold. And so the epigenetic side of the things just allows us to adapt to our environment much faster than the slow evolution, you might say, of regular DNA.
There are people throughout the world who live to be 100. They have low incidence of cancer. They have low incidence of Alzheimer's or any other kind of dementia. And they're very happy people. In the Western world, Australia, New Zealand, Europe, and the US, we're not as lucky. We're not as fortunate. What's the difference, Greg?
So these are the blue zones you're talking about, places around the world where people live to in their hundreds and very healthily, so with much greater frequency than the rest of us. And they do 4 things. They've done a lot of research on this, and they found 4 things they do that are slightly different. One is that they have a plant-based diet, and with that diet, they typically have their biggest meal in the morning, and they never eat till they're full. So that gives us some clues there, because really the Western diet is loaded with calories. Typically we eat all the time, and when we're not, when we eat outside our meals as well, we snack. And this is actually not aligned with our biology. If we go back 100,000 years ago, which is really what we're at, I mean, we're modern human beings with ancient bodies, if you will, and those bodies are adapted to life back then. There were periods of time when we didn't eat, and when that happens, you flip between there's 2 states that we can have. There's a fed state and a fasting state. And the fed state flips on a switch in our cells called mTOR. And mTOR is essentially a little sensor that works out what we're eating and how to assimilate it into the body. And when we eat, mTOR turns on a bunch of cascades which help us assimilate all the food. On the flip side, if we don't eat, then that switch gets turned off, and all these housekeeping cascades happen. We start to clear out the junk cells, we clear out the proteins which are not working properly, and we actually get energy from that as well. And so I think the biggest challenge and what the people in the blue zones are doing and what we're not doing is that we're not sitting in that fasting state enough and giving the body the chance to actually clear out the junk. And when we do that, then there is just many health benefits. So, there is a fasting movement out there. Some people can and some people can't do it. I think the biggest thing that people can do is not snack between meals. And the reason for that is that each time you put some food into yourself, you start and trigger things like release of insulin and all these other hormones that kick in, because the body's getting prepared to utilize that food and assimilate it. And so if we've got that switch on all the time, it's just not good for us.
So it kind of burns out the battery.
It does burn out the battery, and it just doesn't give our bodies a chance to stop and kind of recycle things, because as soon as we eat again, then everything that got recycled is rebuilt and is built fresh, and so these things have an effect on us. And we talked, we can talk about senescence, which is one of the other hallmarks, cellular senescence. And cellular senescence really just describes a state where our cells stop dividing, and normally our body clears them out, gets rid of them. But as we get older, we accumulate senescent cells, and they're like the neighbors you don't want to have, senescent cells. They're toxic, they're noisy, and this is what happens. They're just not healthy to the cells, their neighboring cells. And so just by always eating, we don't get a chance to clear them out. And yeah.
One of the big things right now throughout the world is the practice of periodic fasting, maybe fasting for half a day or one day at a time. Next you eat, and then like almost like taking Saturday off.
Yeah, it's something I do personally, and I do it for a couple of reasons. One is it's just been shown that it's incredibly healthy for your body and helps you to renew your cells. And the other thing is I really enjoy food, and so it helps me manage my weight. So I'm sort of, I get a double benefit from that. So on 2 days a week, I don't eat for 24 hours, and it's a little tough to get started, but once your body adjusts to it, then you can do it. But for people who are challenged, then just skipping breakfast once or twice a week has got some real health benefits.
Eating clean. I think of eating clean in New Zealand, starting with lamb. Okay. Now you mentioned plant-based, but can you occasionally have meat of one kind or another?
Absolutely. Even in the blue zones, it's plant-based diet, but they certainly enjoy pork, lamb, beef. It's just not a key part of their diet. So maybe once or twice a week or once or twice a fortnight. And I'm a proponent of everything in moderation, and including moderation. So certainly, it's about a compounding effect of doing the right things for as long as possible. So no, a bit of lamb and a bit of organic lamb is absolutely fine for you.
Got it. Especially New Zealand lamb, organic.
You got it.
Right. Okay.
Absolutely, Mark.
What about chocolate? I don't know why I'm mentioning that, but a day without chocolate to me is like a day without sunshine.
Well, I agree. Like, and what dark chocolate's really where you want to hang out, isn't it? And that dark chocolate's got lots of those rich antioxidants in there. And so, no, I think I would even say that chocolate's a health food in moderation.
Let's talk about another area, and that is the E word. Okay. Now I try to exercise, but as we were doing our chat, somebody called me and needed some immediate advice, and I had to stop and help them. And that's what happens to me with exercise. Life gets in the way. How important is exercise to combat the forces of aging?
It's probably the single best thing that you can do. Exercise.
I was afraid of that.
Yeah, I know it's a tough one, but it's actually really important that we commit to it. And what I like to do these days is I've started doing a whole bunch of walking meetings. Like if I'm going to catch up with someone, I'll take a walk and make a call. Or I want to listen to a podcast. I do that while I'm walking. I'm sort of exercising my brain as well as my body. So if you can kind of hack it a wee bit and double up on things, then that's a great way to tackle it. But if you can walk half an hour a day, then that's huge. Even if it's 5 minutes a day, it's just moving just turns on a whole bunch of genes. It reduces inflammation. It's like taking all the best medicines in the world to keep you well. So, and it's just something you can do for free, and it has amazing health benefits.
Just basic walking.
Just walking. You don't have to hit the gym. You don't have to go for a run and all these things. Just moving and doing that as many times a week as you can is just going to put you in a really good place. It's really good for you, and it releases a whole bunch of brain growth factors as well. So it just keeps you sharp. There's just so many benefits on so many levels for doing a little bit of exercise. That E word is important, and I know I struggle with it as well because you just life gets in the way of it. But you're an important person in this world, and so treat yourself that way and actually get out there and make a commitment to it.
You have to take time for yourself, is what you're saying.
You do, yeah, absolutely. Right. Sharpen the saw.
Why do you think that countries like New Zealand, Australia, Europe, and the US, we have such a high incidence of cancer?
Mm-hmm.
And we have such a high incidence of one form of dementia or another. Any reason for that? Is it because we're eating so many bad foods and we're not exercising?
I feel like sugar has a huge part to this, and it sounds a little simplistic, but the sugar is I want to say the new nicotine. And actually, I sat next to a doctor on a plane when I was in Los Angeles, and I was 21. I was at a pharmacy conference, and we got talking, and he said to me, sugar is going to become the next nicotine. It's just that our biology is just not well set up for it, and we just give ourselves too much. It flips all sorts of circuits. It heads to our bellies in the way of fat. We really need to be quite focused and quite aware of sugar. And when we have sugar, we set up inflammation in our body. And if you get inflammation for too long, then it's putting our DNA under stress. And when our DNA is under stress, it can break. Next minute, it's cancer. So it's just, obviously there's a lot of bad luck associated with getting cancer, but there are just things you can do every day which minimize your risk. And it's like the opposite of buying a lotto ticket, right? If you can invest in less sugar, you're buying a ticket for better health in that lottery called life.
And sugar is addictive. There's no question about it.
Yeah, and we just don't need it. I mean, that's the thing. And look, it's really nice, and our biology is designed for us to crave it, because back in the day there wasn't so much of it around, and so we would when we came across it, we would eat a bunch of it because we wouldn't know when the next lot would come. But in this modern life, that problem's gone away, and so we've got the other problem that our body's trying to tell us to take it, but we don't need it.
One of the things that pops into my mind is there's so many of us overburdening the healthcare system. I don't know if it's that way in New Zealand, but it certainly is in the US. There are a couple of movies, person gets to be 30, they get shot or recycled or right.
Yep.
I think Harrison Ford was in the original. My point is, up to 30, we're pretty much okay, and then there's a downhill spiral. Do young people need to take into account sugar, exercise, and everything else?
100%. Yeah. I mean, it's like we all put away a few dollars a week for our financial retirement, and we need to be doing the same thing for our healthy retirement. And you want to start in your 20s even, with it, trying to get some exercise habits, but in our 30s even more so. And especially, and it's a really difficult time in your life, because quite often that's when you're doing things like starting families and getting mortgages and all those fun things. But if you can make good decisions and small good decisions from your 30s, it's going to have a really big payoff as you get older. And we don't need to have a scenario where we're burdens on the healthcare system until much later in life, if we make those good decisions earlier. And what we've got now, which no other generations have had before, are exciting molecules like nicotinamide mononucleotide, nicotinamide riboside, that boost key enzymes in our cells, that and other products, ingredients like hobamine, which is a new type of antioxidant. These are new molecules which are available to us that are like, I want to say insurance, or just essentially like that bank account that's got a much higher interest rate. You're getting a lot more benefit from it, right? So, you do all the good things like eat well and do a little exercise, but you layer these little,
I'm sorry.
it's all right. You layer these molecules on top of that, then you are getting a much better return for your buck, if you will.
What you mentioned, the 30s and 40s. What about somebody who's in their 70s or their 80s? Is it too late? Should they
Not
just
at
check
all.
out?
No, there's some really interesting research about a molecule called rapamycin, and that's known as really the first molecule that actually affects the aging process. And we know that it works well at any time, because the researchers gave mice at the equivalent of the age of 60 rapamycin, really just because it was really interesting why. But anyway, these mice responded really well, and they actually managed to get these mice to the equivalent age of, I think the oldest one was 140. So, you can intervene at 60. Yeah, well, it's coming. There's clinical studies happening now, which may mean that, in a decade or so, or even 5 years, that taking this particular medicine will actually slow the aging process down for the human mouse, human lab rat, if you will. So no, it's never too late to start. It's never too late to tune up your mitochondria with molecules that boost NAD. Never too late to utilize fasting to help your body clear some of those senescent cells, which are creating an inflammatory burden on your body. So no, I think it's right, today's a good time to start if you whatever age you are.
The name of the book is Harnessing the Nine Hallmarks of Aging. It's been up between Greg and me throughout the interview. I really appreciate your time. Don't make it a couple of years. What's next on the docket for Greg Macpherson?
Well, thank you for asking. So, yeah, I've got a project I'm working on, and it really came from the research from the book, where I started to realize that there's not a lot of products out there that can help people age, that are accessible to everybody. And so I've kind of done the hard work and worked out what molecules to take. And so we'll be launching a brand called SRW, which is all about science, research, and wellness. And it's essentially taking the heavy lifting of all that research I've been doing and just translating it into products which people can take, which will help them on their healthy aging journey.
I volunteer to be a beta tester.
Good stuff. I'll send you a couple of bottles, Mike.
Yes, I'd appreciate that. I need to be young.
We all do, right? And we can be old and young as well. So it's I think that's what's going to, where we're all heading. We've got our basic understanding of what we can do to be healthier with diet and food and so on, reducing stress in our lives. Next step is for us to get access to some of these molecules and that move these dials and switches that can interfere with the aging process and slow it down. And the whole purpose of that is to be as young as possible for as long as possible. And the whole purpose for that is that all these conditions that we get as we age, these Alzheimer's and heart disease and Parkinson's, these are conditions associated with a syndrome called aging. And if we can actually slow the aging process down and keep ourselves healthier, we kick those problems down the road. And I think that's what we all want.
Yeah, absolutely. We want to live to be 120. Greg, thank you very much. Don't be a stranger. Let's do this again soon as you
Great.
get more and more. I'd love to talk to you again. You're fun to talk to.
Yeah, I enjoyed the conversation, Mark. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hold on a second. I'm Mark Alyn, and this is Late Night Health. Take a look at the book, Harnessing the Nine Hallmarks of Aging by Greg Macpherson, and it's available wherever good books are sold. I'm Mark Alyn for Greg. We'll see you next time. Bye bye for now.
Bye.